Are able to put your reviews and comments on the vprsearch.unm.edu website, so we encourage you to do that, and you can see full bios posted there as well as the ones that are in your seat. So Dr. Rebar has spent a lot of time at Purdue University, where he received a PhD and a doctorate of veterinary medicine before he came to Albuquerque and worked with the Loveless Inhalation Research Institute. And I can tell you that he worked there long enough to become a big fan of green chili and enchiladas, and is still subscribing to New Mexico Magazine. So he is a New Mexico lover. He was here at the time Michael Cooper played Lobo basketball. And he went back to Purdue, where he has spent his academic career. He served as a dean for 10 years, and his most recent 10 years, he's been the director of Discovery Park at Purdue, and a lot of interesting insights based on that. So I'm going to give it to Dr. Rebar now, and there'll be time for questions at the end. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Julie. And first of all, let me thank the search committee and the provost and the president for inviting me to UNM. This is truly an honor to be with you all today. I thought I would divide my remarks into three different areas. I thought I would tell you a little bit about my personal background, maybe put some chronology to the comments that Julie has made. Then I want to talk to you about Discovery Park, which is a unique research entity at Purdue, and certainly my experience there has kind of formed my perspectives of where university research is going in the future, and things that will be helpful in helping universities guide their direction. And then specifically, I want to address some perspectives about my vision of the role of the Vice President for Research in a research university. So to begin, I indeed have spent most of my academic career at Purdue. I received my Doctorate of Veterinary Medicine in 1973, and my PhD in pathology in the area of toxicologic pathology in 1975. And I was actually the first DVM student at Purdue to do a dual DVM PhD, which is why the time frame between the DVM and PhD is so short. I joined the faculty of Purdue immediately after completing my PhD as an assistant professor of veterinary clinical pathology. And then in 1977 had the opportunity to migrate out to what was then the Loveless Inhalation Toxicology Research Institute here on Kirtland Air Force Base. And at the time, Loveless was a national laboratory, so a sister laboratory to Sandia and Los Alamos, and I had the chance to interact with individuals in both of those settings. In 1979, I came back, moved back to Purdue as associate professor, and then in 1983 was promoted to full professor, which is currently the academic position I still hold. From an administrative perspective, the first administrative post that I held was Associate Dean for Research in the School of Veterinary Medicine, post I had for about 7 years. And during the last 3 years of that time period, I also served as the head of the Department of Veterinary Pathobiology. In 1996, following a national search, I was selected as Dean of the School of Veterinary Medicine, and I served as Dean for about 9 years to 2005. And in 2005, President Martin Jiske asked me to join the central administration in kind of a dual role, the Senior Associate Vice President for Research and also Executive Director of a relatively, really quite a new entity at Purdue at the time, Discovery Park. So I want to talk a little bit about Discovery Park and what it is and how it works. And this is an overview of the facilities of Discovery Park that was taken in about 2013. It's short 2 of the buildings that we currently have. Discovery Park actually is housed now in 7 different facilities. We have the Center for Entrepreneurship, Man Hall, which is really focused on global sustainability and healthcare engineering, the Bioscience Center, which is linked by a walkway to our very, very large Nanotechnology Center. In the background, you can see the Discovery Learning, the Hall for Discovery Learning and Research, which is really focused on how we can teach better in an interdisciplinary setting, and particularly focused on STEM education. And buildings not pictured there include the Multidisciplinary Cancer Research Facility, which we just finished this spring, and also the Center for Drug Discovery. So there are actually 7 buildings in this complex, and when I joined Discovery Park back in 2005, the only facility in place was actually this one. So I was involved in the building of all of those entities. So I want to begin with a definition of what Discovery Park actually is. And we like to think of Discovery Park as Purdue's hub for interdisciplinary research, interdisciplinary and translational research. And it was originally conceived as a place where we would bring together scholars from all different disciplines: humanities, social sciences, the life sciences, agriculture, engineering, veterinary medicine, and pharmacy, all of those different disciplines, to work on problems that really faculty from no one discipline could solve on their own. Things that we like to think of as grand challenge issues, things like global warming, alternatives to energy, alternative energy solutions, things like nanomedicine, or the development of sensors that were basically micro or nano mechanical machines which would operate in a variety of different settings, be they biologic or physical. Discovery Park today is comprised of 10 or 11 core centers, which are listed for you here on the left. And just the titles of these core centers will give you some idea of the focus of the work that goes on within them. These core centers really are kind of focus areas of emphasis, but the role of the centers is to bring together faculty to respond to RFAs or RFPs on projects which might be funded by a variety of federal agencies or foundations, and that in particular operate in the interdisciplinary space. The six of the 7 buildings are illustrated on the right once again. Now, each of these core centers actually is led by a faculty scientific director, and the role of the scientific director is to guide the strategic agenda of the research within each of the cores. One point I want to make is that all of this is about 300,000 square feet of research and office space, and the office space is all designed in a way that facilitates groups of faculty and students working together. So most of our offices are designed as suites. We might have 3 or 4 faculty offices, 3 or 4 spaces for postdocs, and another 12 to 15 spaces for graduate students within a suite. None of these suites and none of the laboratory space in Discovery Park is owned by any individual or any department. It's all shared space. The way Discovery Park operates is that projects are brought into Discovery Park. They need the use of the facilities. These are either seed projects that are funded from a variety of seed grants, or else they're projects which have received extramural support. They stay in Discovery Park, they occupy space as long as they're funded. If they lose funding, they move out and are replaced by another center or group activity. In this way, we regard Discovery Park as a renewable resource for the university, and it allows us to be very flexible, and it also gives us the ability to work fairly closely with industry, from the point of view that oftentimes industry will approach us with a problem that is often multidimensional, and they'll say, can you help us on this problem? And the role of Discovery Park will be to organize the faculty around that problem and bring together all the appropriate disciplines And then, of course, industry operates on a different timeline than we do. So by having this flexible space, we can respond to that appropriately. Discovery Park is now a billion-dollar enterprise. If you look at its cumulative history, and if we look at the breakdown there, I just wanted to point out that includes about $775 million, and this was at the end of 2013. It's now $850 million in research expenditures. So much of what drives Discovery Park are research grants, and I do want to emphasize we are an academic research entity, not a technology park, and I'll say something about that in just a moment. The buildings of Discovery Park are valued at about $200 million, and all but $25 million of that has been raised through private donations, and all of the facilities in Discovery Park are totally paid for. $20 million came from an NIH grant, which funded the multidisciplinary cancer research facility, and $5 million actually came from the state of Indiana. Heck of a good deal for the state of Indiana. We also have been able to generate somewhere in the neighborhood of about $14 million in endowments, and these endowments are used to support some of our programs and also to give discretionary funding to both the executive director, me, and the directors, scientific directors of each of the core centers. We list about $37 million in terms of research equipment. That's a massive underestimate of the actual amount of research equipment that's in Discovery Park, because all we list there is the new research equipment that we actually brought into Discovery Park on our own grants. There's a pretty significant amount of research equipment that now is located in Discovery Park and has been moved there by the academic units, or has been a part of startup packages for new faculty, which we don't count. Our goal in Discovery Park is to provide core facilities that are too expensive for any individual academic unit to support. Those are going to be housed in DP. So Purdue has two parks, and I wanted to make sure that I explain the difference between the two for you, because they're often confused, even by, in some cases, our own faculty. So we have a Purdue Research Park, which has actually been at Purdue for a long time. It was founded in 1961. This is our true technology park. It's a technology incubator. It's where the new startups go. In contrast to that, Discovery Park is all academic research. We do some contract work for industry, but we have no companies that are permanently located in Discovery Park. We might open up our facilities, our core facilities, to users from industry on a short-term basis, but they wouldn't live there permanently, since nobody does live in Discovery Park permanently. The Purdue Research Park is north of campus, about 5 miles. It's got about 3,600 employees. It's one of the largest technology research parks associated with any university anywhere in the country. We have 160 companies located in the Purdue Research Park, and 3 of the last 10 years, we've been identified as the top university-associated research park in the country, and that's against competition like Research Triangle and the Stanford Research Park and so forth. So this is a major enterprise that is run as a nonprofit and does definitely interact with the university. All of these companies have space in the research park because of an interaction with the university. Discovery Park, as I said, has 11 core centers. We're only on 40 acres. We don't have nearly as many staff. We have about 160 currently permanent staff in Discovery Park, but we have 1,000 faculty members who are affiliated with Discovery Park programs. That's about 1/2 of the total faculty who are at Purdue. So what's the secret sauce that has made Discovery Park successful? I would suggest that it's really our infrastructure, and that infrastructure is in 2 forms. It's technical infrastructure and it's administrative infrastructure. I think over the 14 years that we've been in existence, we've really begun to appreciate how to run an interdisciplinary research entity that makes sense from the faculty perspective. And I'll turn to the administrative support first. We've learned that if you want faculty to lead a large interdisciplinary project, say a $5 million grant, that's going to involve maybe 9 or 10 faculty on the campus, another 10 faculty scattered across the country, and maybe 4 or 5 industrial collaborators, not to mention potential research institutes in foreign countries, you better be able to provide the administrative support that will facilitate their doing so. And so we've really worked to develop a model that allows our faculty to do what they do best, which is be creative, and underpin that then with an administrative infrastructure which supports that. So for example, in Discovery Park, whenever we launch a project of this kind of scope, we're going to have a pre-award team that will include a grant writer, an operations manager who will take care of all the logistics of getting all the faculty together to talk about this project as it's being developed. Every core center, in addition to the scientific director, also has its own managing director who is an operations kind of person who handles the activities of the center on the ground, and they'll be working with this group of faculty as well. When the grant is written and if it gets funded, we'll immediately assign, at the expense of the Office of the Vice President for Research, a managing director to work with the faculty to begin to, even before the money gets there, think about what it's going to take to coordinate this project. So that may mean hiring new staff. It may mean advertising graduate positions. It may mean making sure that the space you were promised is still going to be there. All of these sorts of things we're going to take care of. In terms of negotiating the contracts with all of those other institutions that are involved, that'll all be done by our award teams. So the whole idea here is to kind of divide the labor between the faculty, let them do the scholarship, and we'll take care of the administrative side. And we've developed this approach over about a 10-year period, trial and error, I would have to tell you. On the technical side, we do house the research cores for the university that, in partnership with the academic units, that are really too expensive for any individual unit to maintain. And so, for instance, on the life science side, we have the cellular imaging, the proteomics, metabolomics, bioinformatics, ionomics, high-throughput screening. All of those cores are actually in our bioscience facility. Surrounding laboratories are assigned to groups of faculty that have projects that need those facilities, okay? When they don't need them anymore, another project moves in, they move out. In the same way, on the physical science side, we have the largest nanofabrication facility anywhere associated with an academic unit. We have our clean room is about 25,000 square feet of assignable space. It has numerous bays. All of the equipment in those bays has either been added by other academic units or it's been bought through Discovery Park grants. That's surrounded by a series of laboratories that handle whatever is fabricated in the nanofabrication facility and so forth. We also have, within the Burke Nanotechnology Center, we have several metrology laboratories which are absolutely vibration-free. They've been built as separate buildings within the Burke building, so they're standalone facilities, and some of them measure at such a fine level that the investigators have to set up the experiment, clear the room, and then run the experiment remotely. So we're very well equipped to handle all of those things that are essential to do cutting-edge research on both the physical and the life science side. This just gives you an idea of the level of activity that we have ongoing in Discovery Park. I thought it might be useful to look at a 5-year window. So this is the last 5-year window. Gives you an idea that we've submitted almost 2,400 proposals. If we'd been successful, we would have brought in over $2 billion to the university. We weren't. But we did manage to, during that time period, generate about 1,500 new grants, which brought in about $400 million in new research to the university. We're very mindful of our interactions with industry. So over that time period, we brought in about 350 proposals that accounted for about $53 million in research dollars that were associated with industry or foundations. And as I said at the beginning, one of the goals of Discovery Park was to be focused on large-scale research. So we pay a lot of attention to the size of grants that we submit in particular, We're interested in the ones that are over $1 million because those are big, complex grants for the most part. And during that time period, we had 500 that were submitted in that category. So about a third of all of the grants that went through Discovery Park were really large grants. This will give you some idea of the scope of activity in Discovery Park. It's a listing of some of our current research centers. These are all funded with extramural support. If you just read the titles, it'll give you some idea of the areas of activity. But equally of interest, I think, is that if you read the names of the funding agency, you'll see that through Discovery Park, we basically receive money from just about, listed here are 4 agencies. We receive money from just about every agency, federal agency that does provide funds to research. Besides the ongoing projects in Discovery Park, we're also always very aware that we have to keep things coming down the road. So this is a listing of some of the projects that we had as ongoing projects during that 5-year period. I'll only draw attention to one of them, the Purdue Center for Drug Discovery. This was started as a seed grant kind of project several years ago, and now it has its own building. So it's emerged and is now a core center in Discovery Park. And that's kind of the ideal for success, the metric for success that we would like to follow. I think this graphic kind of summarizes fairly well the way Discovery Park works. We're a pipeline model. Projects come in at the left end of the pipeline, and these project ideas either come from the scientific directors who have the responsibility for driving a research agenda, or from groups of faculty who get together and basically say, you know, we think the next big thing is going to be such and such. They'll come, if they're in the life science area, they may come to the director of the Bindley Bioscience Center and say, can you help us launch a project in this domain? We'd like to start getting faculty together. We may do something as simple as sponsor brown bag lunches. That may lead to bringing in outside speakers. We'll try to nurture a project through the pipeline. We'll invest for up to 3 years in the hope of creating a circumstance where at the end of the pipeline, and we really do look at the end at about 3 years, this project has generated enough preliminary data that it's generating sustainability from outside grants. So that's a success story in Discovery Park. If it's not, we'll kind of say to the faculty, well, you know, good try, let's try something else. Along the way, we're going to look for industrial collaborators. We always try to do that because we try to get as many different sources of input as possible into the Discovery Park projects as we can. When we come to the end of the pipeline, and we do have a sustainable, successful project, one of the things we're going to do is say, okay, are there things here that can be commercialized, and are the faculty interested in commercializing? And if the faculty are interested in commercializing and we think there are some possibilities, we'll actually put them together in the Center for Entrepreneurship with some entrepreneurs in residence that we have, and also some MBA students. We have about 30 MBA students who work with faculty within the Entrepreneurship Center with the idea of, okay, should this be a startup company? Do you have a technology that could lead to a startup company? Or should it be licensed to an existing company? Or in fact, if this was done with the input of industry, is there a joint venture? But we're looking to see if there's a value proposition. We don't expect this from every project. We're also looking for social impact from the work that we do. But if it's there, we don't want to miss it. And we do take a very systematic approach to kind of exploring on a regular basis all of the work that's being done in Discovery Park and seeing where it might lead. So let me close on Discovery Park just by taking a few minutes to brag a little bit about what we have accomplished. In terms of large-scale interdisciplinary research, we currently have 11 projects funded at $5 million or higher, of which 8 are $10 million or higher, and the largest being a $105 million grant. I should tell you that when Discovery Park was launched, Purdue didn't have a single project of more than $5 million, funded at more than $5 million. We've raised about $850 million, and currently, if you look back over the last 10 years, and this was a surprise to me, we now average about 22% of the total Purdue research portfolio over that 10-year period. And in some given years, we've been over 30%. when Discovery Park was launched, it was under 10% for interdisciplinary projects. I think one of the things we've really learned how to do through Discovery Park is how to build partnerships. Over our history, we've had over 100 industrial partners participating in our projects. We've also participated with over 100 different universities on things like ERCs and STCs and so forth along the way. And we currently have 20 international partnerships that are active and ongoing, and those include partnerships, for example, with the Korean Institute of Science and Technology, Nizhny Novgorod University in Russia, which is a partnership supported by the U.S.-Russia Foundation, a number of partnerships with research institutions in India, and honestly, I could go on and on about those relationships. We have been concerned about economic development. Martin Jischke, when he created Discovery Park, basically introduced the mantra of not just basic research, but basic research with translation or discovery with delivery. And so we do follow the metrics there, and just one metric is that in terms of startup opportunities since 2001, we've facilitated the start of 75 startup companies. I can't tell you how many of them are still in existence, but I can tell you that a fair number of the ones of the 160 at the research park came out of these 75 from Discovery Park. One of the unintended consequences for us of Discovery Park, we really built it as a research institute, not an academic unit, but it's had a profound effect on educational programs in the university. We started an undergraduate certificate program in entrepreneurship. That was about 10 years ago, and we've had 4,500 participants in that program. We've had 1,300 undergraduate entrepreneurship certificates awarded. We've put 570-some students into startup companies around the state of Indiana, and they've helped 202 companies literally stay in business, and at the same time they've earned credit and got paid. Because that was through a grant program that we were able to develop. We do have an ongoing undergraduate research internship program that takes 60 students a semester to work on Discovery Park projects, and a major goal in Discovery Park is that every project that we run has student involvement at the undergraduate, graduate, and postdoctoral level. And our main goal here is to be a living laboratory where students from a disciplinary background can learn how to work as part of an interdisciplinary team. And that's been a profound change. And although we're not an academic unit, at any point in time, we've got about 300 graduate students who are completing PhD theses on Discovery Park projects. So let me move on then and talk, Jeff, just briefly about my view of the role of a VPR in a research-intensive university. First of all, I think we could all agree that scholarship is truly a core mission of a research university. It's what distinguishes us from those universities where teaching is based upon textbooks. In the research university, it's based upon what our faculty are doing. So it is truly an important core mission. I want to use the term scholarship rather than research because I think it's important to recognize that creativity is what we recognize at the research university, and that crosses all disciplines, the fine arts, the humanities, as well as the natural sciences and engineering. So this is a broad kind of view of scholarship, but I think it's the one that the VPR needs to embrace. I think scholarship and creativity really provide the basis for excellence in outreach and engagement of this particular class of university. And it certainly has the potential to drive economic development. And finally, I think there's no doubt that what we do in terms of our scholarship influences the university's reputation. But growing and sustaining the scholarship or research profile of a research-intensive university is complicated. And truly, the role of the Vice President for Research is to steward that process and in effect to set the tone for the research environment of the university and drive the research agenda. To do that, I think you need to have somebody in place who's a visionary, I think they have to be a leader. I think they have to be able to draw people together for a common goal, build consensus. They also have to be a pretty good manager because resources are slim in most cases. They have to be a facilitator, and maybe more than anything else, I believe that they have to be service-oriented. This is a unit. The Office of the VPR serves the university. It helps the university accomplish its goals. The responsibilities of the Vice President for Research are broad. I think they relate to faculty and students. I think they relate to infrastructure. They clearly relate to governmental and industrial relations. And in this day and age of increasing expectation of accountability from the people that we ultimately serve, the state, if we're a state university, they have to be related to technology transfer and commercialization, because honestly, that's more and more what our public expects. At the core of every great research university, I think, are its people. Its students, its staff, and its faculty. And I think the Vice President for Research then has to work closely with the President, the Provost, academic leaders like the deans, to set high expectations for scholarship for all of our different constituents. At the same time, that presents an obligation. And I think the Office of the Vice President for Research is obligated to develop and maintain a very friendly, service-oriented research support team, which will enable faculty and students to be competitive in the very competitive grants arena and contracts arena that we all work in today. I think, for example, we should have a part, the OVPR should have a part in sponsoring grant writing seminars and bringing in outside experts for particularly our newest faculty and also our graduate students and postdocs. I think we need to have leadership training opportunities for our mid-career faculty, and that would enable them to kind of step out of a private laboratory kind of setting and move to playing a bigger role in the university. And I think also we've got to be able to develop some incentive programs that will encourage our senior faculty to maintain not only their own research productivity in their own laboratories, but be willing to step out of their skin and think about leading some interdisciplinary activities as well. I believe that interdisciplinary research is kind of the future for major research universities. It's what the funding agencies are more and more turning to. When you attend symposia, for example, that are held at the national academies, what you hear over and over again is how do we get people from different disciplines to work together? I think the first university or group of universities that really understands how to do that is going to find itself in a very favored position in the future. I think that when faculty are successful in developing significant and sustainable research programs, they need to be recognized by the office and celebrated for those efforts. And I think we need to put a system in place that actually nominates our qualified faculty as they become more and more preeminent in their fields for prestigious awards like the National Academy or the National Medal of Science, the National Medal of Technology, the Dreyfus Award in Chemistry, the Nobel Award, Nobel Prize as well. We need to be willing to do everything we can to publicize what our faculty is doing. And furthermore, I think we have to work to get them memberships, if you like, in strategic organizations, the National Academies of Engineering, National Institute of Medicine, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. All of those kinds of organizations are important to help us recognize our key faculty. It's also important to the university's reputation and recognition, and it will help us in building our research programs and in bringing the kind of postdoctoral students and graduate students to this campus that you all want. I think the Vice President for Research also plays a pivotal role in the identification of gaps in campus-wide expertise, and that becomes more and more obvious as we begin to write some of these interdisciplinary proposals and they fail. So that provides an opportunity to work with the academic units to think about what those gaps are and to start recruiting faculty who will help fill those gaps. In other words, recruit both to areas of excellence and to areas of gaps. And I think the Vice President for Research has a role in retention as well. Because the biggest problem we face at Purdue is that we recruit them, they come and work for us for a few years, and then they go to the University of Michigan, right? This is not a favorable circumstance from our point of view. So I think that undoubtedly the same happens to UNM, and I think that's something we need to think about. I think one of the roles of the Vice President for Research is that when we have outstanding faculty recruits brought to campus, I think it's the role of the VPR to convince them why this is, number one, the place to come, and number two, the place for them to achieve their career and research goals. Now, in order for faculty to be successful in research, the Vice President for Research also has to ensure that we've got a good campus-wide physical research infrastructure in place. And once again, that can't be done in a vacuum. To do so effectively, I think the Vice President for Research has to work with the deans, the provost, the president, and also core faculty to really define what are the key infrastructural needs and to develop cores that will support them. Now, I think we have to realize this is a dynamic process. Some cores will eventually become outdated as technologies improve to the point that they're affordable for every laboratory to have. Other new technologies will have to be developed. So this is a dynamic process that we have to stay on top of. In a similar way, we can't avoid dealing with IT infrastructure. And I believe it's really important to work with, in our case, it would be the Chief Information Officer, to make sure that advanced research computing is adequate on the campus. This is an area where I've seen a lot of universities kind of fall down, and I think it's something we have to be very mindful of. Now, rest assured, doing 1 and 2 above up there is not inexpensive. So one of the principal roles of the Vice President for Research, I believe, is to be able to develop a business model for the purchase, the maintenance, the replacement of all the equipment that it takes to keep these cores operational. And that alone, or that also needs to be done with support and input from the whole campus enterprise. Any business plan that the VPR develops, in my opinion, needs to provide some opportunity to fund cost share leverage, because what I can guarantee you is that when you get into doing large-scale research projects of the type we do in Discovery Park, every collaborator is expected to have significant skin in the game. It's got to come from someplace. So we've got to think about how are we going to provide some cost share opportunities. And finally, I think that any business plan that the VPR develops also has to think about, and I've talked a lot about seed grants, and I'm a big believer that the best way to keep the faculty moving forward is to invest in some high-risk endeavors that no one else is going to fund. And some of them will pay off because we've got good faculty, and you have to trust in that, and some of them won't. And I think the role of the VPR is to be willing to say, that worked, that didn't, you're in, you're out. And I think you have to be pretty objective about supporting those projects that, in fact, have the potential and show a good possibility of moving forward. There are also responsibilities that have to be met in terms of governmental and industrial relations. The Vice President for Research has to work with the Office of Governmental Relations to advance the research agenda of the university, both at the state and national level, and that means being able to articulate clearly just exactly what is the value of the research that we do to the public and to the legislators. More and more, as we move forward into a tight federal funding environment, we're going to have to create partnerships. And those partnerships will form with industry, with national laboratories, with international research institutions. And I think the VPR really has a clear role in this domain. I think it's important to work with the president, to work with the state, to try to create incentives that will bring more and more collaborating companies to the state and hopefully to our research park. And that has to be an agenda that I think the VPR is involved with, because the VPR is in the best position to really appreciate what industry needs and what our faculty can provide. Ultimately, I think we want to also have a visibility in Washington. It's important for us to be able to promote the involvement of our faculty on advisory policy setting boards that a lot of federal agencies create, because these advisory policy setting boards are what are going to determine the research agenda for those agencies moving forward. And we don't want to be on the outside looking in. We want to be the ones creating that. Now, clearly, as we get more and more faculty who are National Academy members and more preeminent in their field, this becomes easier to do. And this absolutely should be a goal of the Office of the Vice President for Research. Finally, I just want to say a word about responsibilities related to commercialization. Again, commercialization comes back to accountability, and I think it's important that the VPR serve as an advocate for commercialization on campus for those faculty who have technologies that they think could be commercialized and want to do it, okay? This is not something that we impose on all the faculty, because not all the faculty, in fact, a relatively low proportion of the faculty, are going to have any interest in doing this sort of thing. But I think we can create a culture of entrepreneurship on the campus. There are a variety of mechanisms that we can use. At Purdue, through our Burton D. Morgan Center, we offer, for example, boot camps for faculty. These boot camps basically bring in VCs from both coasts to talk about what's involved in creating a startup company. They may also simply have some of our local technology transfer individuals talking about what's involved in writing a good disclosure, what's involved in patenting a technology, trying to demystify the entire process of commercialization for our faculty. In addition, we've created a program that has faculty entrepreneurs from different domains. These are individuals who have successfully started their own companies. They're available to work with faculty, to meet with faculty who think they might have a technology that could be commercialized, and help get them to the table. Now again, this is not something we push on the faculty, but they're available right there on campus, and our technology transfer office actually pays for 20% of their time, six faculty to do this at Purdue. We have an entrepreneurial leadership academy that we basically hold every semester. We take in 12, basically one faculty member from every college on campus who has an interest in learning more about entrepreneurial activities. We'll bring them in. We'll, again, orient them to what we have available at Purdue, and also fund at the level of a small amount, basically $5,000 per participant. We'll give them some money to do a small entrepreneurial project. And then out of that, each year, we'll select one entrepreneurial faculty fellow that will fund at a higher level to continue working on their project. We've done this for about 4 or 5 years now. We've got about 80 faculty who now represent an entrepreneurial community at Purdue. So I think these are the kinds of things that can be done to kind of stimulate development of a culture of entrepreneurship. I think also we want to recognize faculty who are successful in this domain. We have an inventors night where we recognize all of the faculty who, in fact, in the last year have actually had a patented technology. Doesn't need to go on to commercialization, but simply recognizes them for the creativity that they have produced. And again, this crosses all domains. I wanted to include this slide because I wanted to show you that even in the Midwest, we occasionally have an Albuquerque sky. It is rare, however. In summary, my view of the role of the VPR is that it is quite diverse and quite complex in today's environment. It means being able to really handle a variety of often unrelated issues at the same time. I think the successful VPR is one who can do this in a way that is designed to really empower the faculty, the strength of any university, the heartblood of the university is its creativity, and that resides in the faculty. So I think that, enabling the faculty research, creating an environment where innovation is supported, celebrated, is a big part of what the Vice President for Research should do. I think that the Vice President for Research should think big. I think that they should act boldly. I think that they should be willing to take some risks and invest some funds in things that are high risk but high return potential, and also be willing to admit that some of them won't work. I'm a firm believer, and that's why I put up this slide, of the philosophy of Daniel Burnham, who was the architect and city planner when Chicago was in its very early days. And his comment was that we should make no little plans, for they really have no magic to stir men's blood. And I think that applies to the VPR's office today. So with that, I'll close and take any questions that any of you might have.
Okay, just a little bit of time for questions. We'll ask that you come to the mic so the video feed picks up your questions.
My name is Ronald Kay. I'm retired staff from UNM, and I have a question which concerns staff a lot, but really anyone in our facilities. The Center for High Technology Materials is one of the organizations which reports to the Vice President of Research and Development. And some years ago, there was an accident where a staff member was nearly electrocuted. Some time later, the Crystal Growth facility, also managed by CHTM, had a release of arsine gas into a room which was unoccupied at the time, but it was purely accidental that the room was unoccupied. Last year, also at CHTM, a shed to house an extremely high voltage experiment, several 100,000 volts, was constructed to contain the voltage. At the time of construction, it was clear that insufficient funds were available for addressing the electrical needs. Although permitted, physical plant's position was that the shed was constructed only to architectural code and grounded only as a way suitable for low voltage power distribution, as in conventional domestic voltage. At that time, CHTM had a professionally licensed engineer with 20 years of service to UNM on staff. In a memo to CHTM management, the engineer enumerated design deficiencies rendering the shed unsuitable for its intended high-voltage containment function, unless it was modified. The response of management was to inform the engineer that his concerns were irrelevant. A few months later, his position was eliminated by CHTM with just a few weeks of notice given. So my question, excuse me, my voice. My question is, how do you ensure research units protect staff and those within our facilities from lethal conditions, given the apparent financial conflict of interest? Thank you.
So I can't speak, there's no way I can speak to the circumstances
I understand that.
As they occurred at UNM. What I will tell you is that I think risk management is should be a high priority for any of the facilities that we operate. We do have a risk management unit and team at Purdue that certifies facilities and certifies laboratories. And actually, we also have within all of the Discovery Park cores, we actually have safety committees. And those safety committees are made up of the staff in place. Staff and faculty in place. And they then have a responsibility of creating a safety plan which is passed on to risk management. In order for our facilities to be indemnified by the university, and they are if they meet certification procedures, they have to go through this kind of a process, and it's the kind of thing that I would expect I would be watching for if I came here.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Jo Daniel. I'm the Associate Director for New Mexico EPSCoR. And you've got an amazing research program at Purdue. So what is it about UNM that attracts you to leave there?
So that's a question I've had several times today already. First of all, this is a transition point for me in my career. I'm a firm believer that academic administrators shouldn't hang around too long in any one position. So if you go back to kind of my chronology, you'll notice that I think I was associate dean for 7 years, I was dean for 10 years, I was department head for 3 years, and I've been in Discovery Park for 10 years, okay? I had made the decision a year ago that this was going to be my last year in Discovery Park, and I'm simply carrying through on that. I think it's good for me, and I think it's good for the institution. I'm considering several options. UNM was attractive to me as one of those options. Number one, I've lived here. I love New Mexico, right? It's 0 degrees at home right now. I won't deny that that had something to do with it. But more than that, I really like the potential of New Mexico, University of New Mexico, because of its location in relation to the national labs. I think there are some unique opportunities for partnerships that certainly when I was in the national laboratory system, I had real trouble developing that relationship from the national lab end, and every time I tried, my impression was, honestly, UNM wasn't interested. Now, when I went back to Purdue, I actually developed a collaborative graduate program between Purdue and Lovelace, and I trained 6 PhDs out here. So when I think about the trauma I've had over the last 10 years in Discovery Park, trying to get a national laboratory to join us on our proposals, for us, it's really difficult. I think that the opportunity to build those relationships here suggests huge potential for UNM, and I'm intrigued by that. So that's why, you think you're interviewing me, but I'm also interviewing you, right? I'm trying to decide on my own, is this a good fit for me? Is it the right fit for me? And you should be trying to decide if I'm the right fit for you. And so that's a two-way street. And I'm really intrigued about 2 things about University of New Mexico, 3 things actually about University of New Mexico. One is the potential for partnerships, which I think has not necessarily been exploited to the fullest degree. 2 is, I did a pretty good deep dive into the qualifications, the credentials of your faculty, the depth of your programs, the range of your programs, and it's a pretty cool university, actually. And you have pretty great faculty, so that was pretty exciting to me. And then the third thing is both University of New Mexico and Purdue are comprehensive universities, but there's a real difference between the two. And ours is a land-grant university with a science and technology mission, right? And everything is built around that science and technology mission. I'm fascinated by the potential for bringing more liberal arts type activities into interdisciplinary programs that a university like the University of New Mexico has. I would have frankly killed to have a School of Architecture as we were putting together our urban environments proposal, for example. There are huge opportunities to put together both sides. We have a Center for Healthcare Engineering, and 2 of our key grants are in the social sciences, and we had to really kind of troll all over the university to find someone who was willing to lead that effort, right? So there's a different kind of comprehensive university here that I think is pretty exciting. The 4th reason I could give you is that, I've spent my whole career in a and in Purdue's environment. And in many ways, it's been a favored environment because in the state of Indiana, there are 2 research universities, but they don't overlap in what they do. And so in terms of funding, we've gotten a lot of funding. It's kind of, I'm kind of excited to see what might happen in an environment where, I mean, I know New Mexico isn't the richest state in the union, right? I think that's actually kind of an interesting challenge. So those are the reasons.
Tim, I think you might be the last question.
Hello, I'm Tim Graham. I'm director of UNM's Institute for Medieval Studies. So I'm very interested in what the VPR's office can do to advance initiatives in the arts and humanities. In the opening comments of the section of your presentation on Discovery Park, you had mentioned that it encompassed faculty within the humanities. I was trying to see in the list of centers that you put up where they would best fit, possibly in the Discovery Learning Research Center, possibly in the Science of Information Center. But I wonder if you could say a little bit more about what you've done for humanities faculty in Discovery Park, and then beyond that, how your role at UNM might enable you to assist those of us in the humanities and the fine arts.
Well, first of all, let me say that clearly our emphasis is more science and technology. So I think the first thing that I would do were I to come here into this position in UNM, as far as the humanities and fine arts are concerned, is learn more about you. Because I haven't had that kind of experience. And I think you have some really fine programs here, and it would be a matter of listening and looking at how we could work together. One thing I would do that I think we have done at Purdue is really push the development of some grant programs that, funding programs through the OVPR that would be specific in the humanities and fine arts, because your funding spectrum is not nearly as broad or as deep as others would be. So, I think it's important to defend those disciplines, if you like, and we have done that at Purdue. We have special seed grant programs that are just for the humanities and liberal arts folks, and I would certainly be an advocate of figuring out how to continue that. In terms of what we've done in Discovery Park, you're right in terms of identifying the Discovery Learning Center and what was the other one you mentioned?
Science of Information.
Science of Information. Both of those large centers actually do have people involved from several of the humanities. English, communications, which is part of our liberal arts. I'm not sure where that falls in your system, but we also have, well, as an example, our Global Sustainability Institute has within it the Center for Energy, the Center for Environment, the Center for Global Food Security, the Purdue Climate Change Research Center. All of these centers have a pretty significant policy, social science, influencing the public component, where the liberal arts humanities people are absolutely critical to the development of those areas. The director of the Center for the Environment is a political scientist. And he has brought in a fair number of some of his colleagues, not just in poli-sci, but psychology, some of those areas into that domain as well. These are primarily technical centers, so in effect, in Discovery Park, we look for ways that we can couple humanities strengths with the technical strengths that we have on campus. I think that's different than what one would find here, and actually that's one of the things, as I said, I'm excited about. I think the potential in your, even your cultural setting is so unique that I think there's a lot to build on, and it should be valued, and I do. So.
Please join me in thanking I also want to note that you are able to fill out an evaluation on the vprsearch.unm.edu webpage, so we would appreciate your feedback. Members of the search committee, I believe we're meeting in the Luminaria room directly. Thank you very much for coming.